Hi, I'm Jesse, and this is my wife, Halli, and God has called us to plant a church in Cookeville. And this story goes, obviously, before the foundations of the earth. This is God's plan for the world, is the church. But for this church in particular, it goes way back before we even met each other. And I would say even the nucleus of a lot of this happened right here at Stephen Street.
I got saved here at Stephen Street, a part of the youth ministry here. I remember in particular on Wednesday night, Pastor Dave was preaching, and I just had this overwhelming sense that I wanted to be a pastor's wife. And I pushed that down pretty far because that was just a really weird thought in high school. But when I met Jesse in college, it just all came together and seemed to make sense.
Yeah, so we went to school in Knoxville, and while I was up there, God did just a radical work in my heart and my life and just changed me in a drastic way. And through that process, people started to notice things and call out things to me like, "Are you going to be a pastor?" And I thought they were crazy. But over time, as I started to process with my pastor and with my brother who's a pastor, just realized that this was the call of God on my life, that He was calling me to be a pastor. My calling to ministry was also coupled with this idea of church planting, and I got plugged into a church plant from the ground up. They were about 3 to 6 months old at the time. I met Halli the next year, and she came right into that ministry, and we were just a part of a church plant all throughout our college time, and it was a great experience. God used that church tremendously in our life and really just placed a burden for church planting in our hearts. So we thought that was our long-term goal, but we realized I needed to be trained in the ministry and educated. So we got married in college, and shortly after we graduated, moved to Louisville, Kentucky so I could go to Southern Seminary. Through that, the Lord did some really cool things, and I got a job as a youth pastor at Highview Baptist Church. And Highview, the pastor, while I was there, Aaron Harvey, was a church planter. So once again, I'm just engulfed in a church planting culture. And so my heart was still stirred, and God was just confirming this calling to plant churches. But once we had babies, we just decided we wanted to be close to grandparents. So that's what brought us back to Tennessee. Specifically Cookeville, because this is where Halli was raised, and we had friends here already. We knew Stephen Street, so we wanted to get plugged in. We were at a meeting with our church family. It was a dinner to raise money to get out of debt, and Scott was just speaking about all of these reasons why we need to get out of debt. He was listing off these things about, man, we need to get out of debt so we can do this, so we can do that. And one of the things that he mentioned was, we need to get out of debt so that we can plant churches in Cookeville. And me and Halli were sitting at the table, and at that moment, I got butterflies in my stomach. It was a really weird feeling, and Halli kind of felt something too. And I remember us going home and talking about that, like, you know, we might could see us doing that. At that event, later on, Scott came up to me and just kind of hit me and said, "Hey, you want to plant a church in Cookeville?" And he's just being silly, but that sentence did not leave me. I couldn't stop thinking about that. And so he asked me to preach on Sunday nights, and eventually asked me to preach on Sunday mornings. And so we just started to meet regularly. And he asked me when we were out for lunch one day, he said, "God's gifted you. What are you going to do with this gift?" And I hadn't really thought deeply about that. I just intended to serve in a local church, but I kind of expressed of my interest in church planting, but I kind of thought that dream was just going to die with us moving to Cookeville, because I had no intention of leaving Cookeville. I love this place. And so he asked me, "What's stopping you from pursuing this calling to church plant? Why not here?" And I had a lot of things in my mind that were stopping me from planting a church. I couldn't give him a good enough reason, but some of those were, doesn't Cookeville have enough churches? Another reason was our life is really busy. At the time, Halli was pregnant. She was just starting a new career, and there was just a lot going on in life. We have lots of kids, and there was a lot of things that were in the way of me just saying yes. We just started to seek the Lord together as a couple, and over time, God began to align our hearts. Pastor Scott challenged me. He said, let's start walking together. We began to look into God's Word and pray together and seek the Lord. And through that process, we have just come to an overwhelming sense that this is God's plan for Stephen Street, to start a new church in Cookeville, to continue the mission of God here. Jesus began his ministry calling out these fishermen, saying, hey, leave your careers and come and I will make you fishers of men. He's calling them from the beginning to mission. And then he bookends his ministry with the Great Commission. Go and proclaim the gospel all over the world. And so that's Kingdom Community Church. We exist to be a church in Cookeville that's devoted to following Jesus together. Jesus told us to pray for God's kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven. And he does that through his church. So what part of this is God calling you to be a part of?